Happy Halloween. There. You happy? I'm a little late. And as you can see, didn't go so well. This is a design. It's a really neat design by Mega Wilbon. And you can find it on Thingiverse. They have a few designs. Yes, I am still recording, just making sure. They have a few designs. This one is print in place, and it's supposed to be articulated. It is not articulated. As you can see, I broke it trying to articulate it. So clearly my tolerances weren't right. Things were sticking together. When that happens, sometimes I cheat. So I thought, you know what? I am going to just scale it up by 40%. And that will also scale up the gaps and the tolerances. Unfortunately, this is what happened. The issue is that these individual segments, as you can see, are, they're individual components. They're freestanding. They are trapped by other things, bits that they're articulated with. But when you're printing it off of a very small base at the bottom. And the tendency is, apparently, for them to come loose and start to move around. Now, they're articulated, so they're still attached. But they can move. They can't just come completely free, but they can move a little bit. And then the print continues, and they get knocked around, and they knock the next bit. And then that knocks the next segment. And before long, the whole thing is an enormous mess. But turned on Brim and really cleaned up the build plate, and we were able to get a complete print. But it is still not fully articulated. It's not opening up. And the issue, let me get something to point with. The issue here is, let's see, this one's free. I mean, this one can move. So this is the outer arm, and then there's an inner arm. And you can see it, that's one that's really obvious. This one's obvious. So this is the bottom of the inner arm, and as it swings outward, this bottom part is supposed to swing into that gap, and as you can see, it's just too tight. Tolerances are still too tight there. So clearly what I needed to do is I need to deal with the tolerance issue. So, I couldn't just fudge it. Maybe I could, a little bit, but fudge it better. This is a neat design by Zappa. Let me double check that. Anyways, 3D tolerance test by Zapta, Z-A-P-T-A, on Thingiverse. And there's a couple issues with this particular print. One was I had the infill turned off, so that's why it's ugly in the middle here. That doesn't really affect what this is testing. What this is a set of spindles trapped inside this flower with varying degrees of tolerance between the spindle and the outside. So in the middle here, we have 0.5 millimeter, 0.5. And you can see that printed just fine. We can go down to 0.3 here, and that turns. 0.25, that turns. Although I had to work it a little bit to break it free. And then finally we have, finally we have 0.2. And that does not turn at all. So clearly that's the issue I'm dealing with, and that's causing the problems. Fortunately, if you're using Prusa slicer or any flavor of slicer, there's a setting called XY compensation. And what that does, let me get this guy to use this as an example. Imagine every surface on this print. XY compensation, if you give it a positive value, it moves that surface out by that many millimeters. And give it a negative value, it moves that surface in by that many millimeters. So I just reprinted it with negative 0.1 millimeters. And here's the result. I also had infill turned on, so it came out a lot better. And what you can see is all the way down, here's 0.1, and it just turns freely. So that was sufficient. There was just no hesitation to turn. Everything printed just fine. So, okay. Obviously, it's going to work now, right? Not quite. These are articulating now. Mostly. And you can see what we're supposed to have here. This guy is supposed to be a pumpkin that turns into a spider. There's our nice little spider face, complete with the fangs. Problem is, and I finally realized this after printing this, is there's an issue with this particular design that doesn't mean it can't be printed. It absolutely can, but it's tricky and it makes it difficult. In particular, these fangs, they're sticking down from the head. So normally, unless there's something to start printing on, they're just going to print out in space. You can't do that. So what the designer has done is let me try to find, there we go. So here's one of the legs. And when we're printing it, this leg is up. And there's this little bit that sticks out from the leg, and then there's a tiny little gap, and then it starts to print the fang. But it's causing problems for me. Either it sticks too well, or there are some issues, or it causes problems with the print, as it did here. And then when Peter tried to pull the leg off, it let go here instead of letting go where it should have let go. So I am declaring defeat. I guess this is my Halloween print of horrors this year, coming out some 10 days later. But just because I want to add something, I am going to move straight into the festive season. There we go. Merry Christmas. A little bit early. See, I'm not behind schedule, I'm ahead of schedule. I'll put this up on Thingiverse and link to it in the description down below. And if you can print these, there are designs of this also available which are not print in place. Probably going to be a lot easier to print. I didn't try that. I went straight to the print in place. Probably shouldn't have. But there's actually some, it actually matters what orientation. There we go. You have a great week. I'll catch you next week. Not sure what we're going to do next. We're going to get to Christmas, hopefully before Christmas this time. Catch you later.